Welcome to another edition of Daily Airline News, focusing on the search for MH370. I'm Jeffrey Thomas, and I'm joined by my co-host, Richard Godfrey from Germany. Good morning to you, Richard.
And good afternoon to you, Jeffrey.
Now, we've had a flood of questions, some amazing questions coming in, and then there's loads of them. But one of the things that struck me, and I know you've done a bit of work on it with some of these questions, is the air conditioning system on a Boeing 777. There's a lot of confusion about the air on a 777, and perhaps you can start walking us through that to start off with.
Yeah, so I thought I'd call this little piece Something in the Air,
Yep.
because it's not obvious to many of the viewers how the air conditioning works and how the cabin air supply works if there's a depressurization and so on. So the normal operation for the air conditioning system on a Boeing 777 is that both air conditioning packs, they're called, and there's one on the left and one on the right, are switched to auto, so they work automatically. And there are four recirculation fans in a Boeing 777, and they're normally switched to on in the cockpit. And there are upper and lower fans and forward and aft fans. The cabin air is recirculated to around about 25% level, and the 75% remaining is ventilated overboard. And the bleed air from the engine is what supplies fresh air from outside, and that contains 21% oxygen by volume, which is the same if at sea level or at altitude, um, and is mixed with recirculated air from the cabin, and the mix ratio is typically 50-50. The mix ratio is controlled by the Environmental Control System, ECS for short, and that control is automatic. The pilot can't influence that mix. There is a filtering of the recirculated air from the cabin to remove bacteria, viruses, and other particles. There is also a filtering of the bleed air at high altitude to remove ozone. There is no oxygen replenishment or enrichment of either the bleed air or the recirculated air because the oxygen percentage remains constant by volume. The reason some people can feel faint in an aircraft is because the cabin altitude is maintained in the cruise between 6,000 and 8,000 feet altitude equivalent. And the partial pressure of oxygen at, say, 7,000 feet is around 77% of the value at sea level. It's the same if you were to climb a mountain, say you were visiting the Alps and you went up a mountain 7,000 feet high. The air is thinner and the partial pressure of oxygen is around 77%. But the oxygen by volume is still 21%, the same at sea level. When you go up even higher in an aircraft, the partial pressure of oxygen at 35,000 feet is only 24%, and at 40,000 feet, only 18%. And that is why, if there's a depressurization, oxygen masks will drop from the cabin ceiling automatically if the cabin pressure is not maintained. So on a Boeing 777, the cabin masks drop automatically when the cabin altitude reaches 13,500 feet, or when the cabin oxygen switch is pushed in the cockpit. So there are two ways to get the cabin mass to drop. One viewer, who's a private jet pilot, said, "Does the Boeing 777 have a override position? Because when he flies into high altitude airports in a private jet, there's an override position in the cockpit to stop the cabin mast being deployed, just simply because they're landing at a high altitude airport." Well, on the Boeing 777, there is no override switch. What they have is, instead is a switch where you can set LDG alt, landing altitude, and that's what you use if you're coming into an airport at high altitude with a Boeing 777. Now, the oxygen supply to the cabin mass doesn't come from the cockpit or the equipment center. There are oxygen generators above each set of seats. So you can have, depending on the seat configuration, on a Boeing 777, between 110 and 140 oxygen generators above each set of seats. And there are one on each side and two oxygen generators above the center set of seats, because there are more seats, obviously. The oxygen generator is a chemical reaction to produce oxygen, which is started by pulling on the mask, which releases a pin. And once it's started, the reaction cannot be stopped and lasts for 22 minutes. And there are more masks than passengers and crew. Masks are available in the door areas, in the toilet, in the crew areas, and there is an extra mask also in each set of seats. And one viewer asked why I only showed 225 passengers on MH370 and not 227. The reason is I was talking about the seat passenger number. There were 225 seats occupied by passengers, and there were two no-seat infants on board. So that's why there were 227 people on board, but only 225 seats. And that is one reason why you have an extra mask in each set of seats. Because you could be having a no-seat infant on your lap, and you need to fix your mask first and then the infant's mask. So I hope that explanation clarifies the situation, but I'm sure we'll have a number of questions, Jeffrey.
I'm sure. And just one thing I'd like to add to that great summary, Richard, is the filters. The filters on these aircraft today are HEPA filters, and they basically, I mean, you mentioned screening out bacteria and the like. They also screen out alcoholic fumes and perfume fumes, which are two of the major causes of jet lag. And basically, they deliver air into the cabin, which is operating theatre clean air. So when we mention recirculated air, it's been cleaned up pretty well. So yeah,
Yeah.
just adding a bit of context to that, Richard, if you don't mind.
No, not
Yeah.
at all. It's useful. Not everyone likes perfume fumes or alcohol fumes.
No, no. So let's continue on. And we left off yesterday with James Baldwin, India 3 Bravo, and we didn't have time to finish off his set of questions. And we continue. Jean-Luc Michard states that we know there were numerous phone calls in a short lapse of time with the doctor. I have not heard this before. Do you know anything about it, and is it irregular? And also, his supplementary question was, it was noted that Zaharie Shah supported Anwar Ibrahim politically, who have been sentenced to 5 years imprisonment just the day before the flight. He, of course, is now the Malaysian Prime Minister. Richard said that the cockpit voice recorder only covers the last 2.5 hours of the flight. Would the data recorder have a log of radio calls made or received before that? So in actual fact, it's three questions.
Yeah. Well, to start with the first one, I said yesterday incorrectly that we were given the last two routine medical reports of Captain Zaharie Shah. I was wrong. Uh, we were given the last one on which took place on the 3rd of December 2013 and another one from the 12th of June 2003. I thought it was the previous one from 2013, and that was my mistake. Um, the doctor who performed the routine medical examination back in 2003 was a guy called Karul Anwar Noor, MD, who was an approved DCA medical examiner at the time. He now runs an occupational health clinic in Kuala Lumpur. And Captain Zaharie Shah has Karul Anwar Noor MD as a friend in Facebook since 2009. So they obviously got to know each other. Captain Zaharie Shah also saw Karul Anwar Noor in 2011. We're not told the reason. So Jean-Luc is correct that Captain Zaharie Shah phoned Karul Anwar Noor on his mobile in February 2014, made one phone call, he sent one SMS, and he received four SMSs back. We don't know the subject that was discussed, but I wanted to point out that Jean-Luc is quite correct in what he said. Jean-Luc also points out that although there were 41 medical appointments listed over 33 years on file at Malaysian Airlines, none were recorded for the years 2005 to 2010 inclusive. The reason for that is that Captain Zaharie Shah consulted a private clinic and not the Malaysian Airlines clinic to get his medical clearance as a pilot. The operation, for example, that he had in 2007 when he fell off a ladder and injured his back was also not recorded on the Malaysian airline list of medical appointments. So that explains the discrepancy there. On the question about does the flight data recorder have a log of calls, answers no. We are reliant on the cockpit voice recorder for any voice recording in the cockpit.
Okay, now this is just a comment, a hello, in fact, Frank Fielder. Thank you, Mr. Godfrey, Mr. Thomas from Frank in Pennsylvania, USA. Well, thank you, Frank, and hello to you. Comment. Now, the next one is from Sound Ariz Submariner 7205. Do all pilots sign off like Captain Zaharie did? Goodnight, Malaysia 370. It does not sound it does sound rather eerie, just wondering to whom exactly did he say this to, or rather, who was he really referring to? As always, gents, your presentation gets 10 out of 10 from me. Keep up the good job. Richard.
Yeah, it is quite normal to say good night and then repeat Malaysian 370 or whatever your flight number is. If you go through the ATC reports in the Malaysian safety investigation report, they provide a transcript of all aircraft in the vicinity at the time of the disappearance of MH370. And you'll find the term good night used on 26 different pages because it's just standard practice in the airline industry in that region.
Now, this is one we've just answered. I guess we'll just run this one. Long tab SIGO. Follow-up question. Comment. Are the passengers O2 mask automatically launched if the aircraft systems detect pressure issues or is it controlled by the pilot? Can you answer that one, Richard? We would
Yeah,
already have answered it.
automatically it dropped from the cabin ceiling. They can be launched by the pilot, but the normal is it's switched to auto and it happens automatically.
So from James Sanders 9955, I wish they would have searched Richard's Whisper hotspot first. They would have found it already. Yeah, right.
Well, thank you, James, for your confidence, but there are other experts who have a different view and other hotspots which
Mhm.
also need to be searched.
So from Cast Oyster, hi Richard, g'day Jeffrey. 2 points to me at least. Seems to make the whole investigation in a totally different direction. Question from viewers of the channel I would add. While Richard has responded to both questions, could there be a connection? Question being, what if the seventh arc ping was wrong? And as covered today, the oxygen was enough for someone to fly the plane for approximately the time as fuel expenditure. Great channel. Look forward to plane guys. Thanks, Steve from England.
Well, thanks, Steve, for that. I'm not quite sure I understand the inference you're trying to make, but the seventh arc is effectively defined by fuel exhaustion. The satellite data unit rebooted at 001937 UTC, and that reboot was caused by fuel exhaustion. So the seventh arc ping is not wrong, in my view, and the oxygen was enough to keep a pilot alive for much longer than the fuel endurance of the aircraft. It actually could last 25 to 27 hours. So, and the fuel only lasted 7 hours 37 minutes. There you go. If you want to come back to me on that, Steve, then please do, and I'll try and put a better answer to your question.
So Stephen Reed, 8732. Um, I like to refer to the captain's two unnecessary radio calls to air traffic control 7 minutes apart, confirming our altitude. Mentor Pilot suggests this might be the point things started to go wrong due to what he perceives is a change in the captain's voice. Also, the final ever transmission, I understand, wasn't read exactly correctly. And my question is, have the captain's other radio transmissions from his many other flights been analysed and compared to give any clues? Did he have a habit of unnecessarily reporting cruising altitude, or did he never do it? And was he always by the book and accurate with his sign-offs, or casual and inaccurate in this case?
Yeah, a very good point, Stephen. And Professor Dr. Kunzel analyzed several recordings of both pilots, but not from all other flights. So there is a wider study which you are alluding to, which could be done. Um, and it would be interesting to find out to the extent to which Captain Zaharie Shah would follow the book and do everything according to the regulation, and to what extent he was more casual. In this event, MH370, he was certainly casual. He, as you say, repeated his flight level, and he didn't repeat the frequency, radio frequency, which you're supposed to. Since he had a first officer with him on the last training flight, you would think that he would then not be casual and be rather according to the book. And it's an interesting observation by Peter Hornfeld, Mentor Pilot, that a mental pilot said he just sounded distracted or busy, and that could well be the case.
Okay, so Alan Baddeley in South Africa, I'll abbreviate this question, would like to know whether the passengers would have been aware of the aircraft deviation.
Yeah. I think it's quite likely that they could be aware the body can sense a movement and turning and change of altitude. Um, if you look out the window in that area of the world, there are a huge number of fishing ships, and each one at night has a little light, and it's like a sea of lights. And pilots have often remarked on this, and they fly over that area. They're flying into Kuala Lumpur or into Bangkok, for example. So it's apparently quite an extraordinary sight, but that would give you a reference, a horizontal reference, and you would be able to sense if you were turning and diverting.
Another question from Saj ABZ2007. How well calibrated is the Whisper data? Has a similar, preferably the same aircraft been tested along the same or similar flight path?
Yep, we've done thousands of tests on different aircraft, so it's been well tested and well calibrated.
Richard McQuasky, 1949. After the 2009 timestamp for the new Clues video, Mr. Godfrey mentioned that the pressurization system flow rate from the MH370 engines was unusually high at about the first U-turn of the flight path, as indicated by the engine health monitoring data. Could you please provide us with any alternative causes for this occurrence other than the cabin decompression scenario? Also, is there a chance that the cabin drop down oxygen mask system could have been left disconnected from its gas source when the oxygen supply levels were topped up before the flight? Thank you in advance.
Yeah, with if it was left disconnected, there are 110 to 140 disconnections you'd have to leave disconnected. So somehow that didn't happen. But coming back to your main question, the cabin air conditioning system um, could have been tampered with prior to the diversion, and that was what I was referring to the video in the video you are quoting. Um, I referred to the high air conditioning pack flow rate of 435 pounds per minute in the climb report, and the climb report was timed at 16:52:21 UTC. That's around 30 minutes before diversion. The Boeing data shows the maximum flow rate is typically just under 400 pounds a minute. So, one possible cause is that one or two of the four recirculation fans were switched off to save electrical load on the generators and hence save fuel. The Boeing documentation shows that a failed recirculation fan will increase the total flow rate by 67 pounds per minute for each fan that is off, i.e., 33.5 pounds per minute per pack. This keeps the total airplane ventilation rate constant. So the system will compensate if there is a recirculation fan switched off or a couple of them switched off. And that was what I was referring to by the possible tampering with the air conditioning system before diversion.
So, Jack Wolf, Q9 Tango. Great updates each day, gentlemen. I'm just wondering what you two guys will do once MH370 is found and the mystery resolved. Any thoughts yet? Richard, what are you going to do?
Amelia Earhart.
Oh, we'll find her. Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, actually, there's quite a few extra channels on our YouTube channel, sub channels, including the plane guys. And so we're going to be doing a lot more in that space, just talking about aviation in general and answering all sorts of questions. So stay tuned. We've certainly got lots of things planned. Now, got speed. If this was an intentional act by a trained individual, Could the amount of flight time and range be affected by reducing power or other means to extend the flight range of the plane by an amount which could be part of the reason why the location has been so difficult to determine? If the flight simulator was used, could it have been used to optimize for flight distance?
Yeah, a great point, and the answer is yes. There is a lot of evidence that this was a very carefully planned and carefully executed intentional act. And there are many examples of this kind of careful planning and execution. For example, the pilot avoided detection by choosing a route to avoid certain radar systems. He switched off the tracking either via SATCOM or by the transponder. He did not use the radio. He switched off passenger communications. He did not follow standard flight routes. He changed altitude. He changed course. He saved fuel, saved electrical power, and did everything possible that the aircraft would not be found. So it's an absolutely fascinating aspect that you raised, Godspeed, and we will follow it up with the investigation work that we are still doing on the in this area.
So from Buffalo Rick 5598, would help to know if Zaharie was aware of the military radar.
Indeed, he was. Having flown in that area for many, many years and being very experienced, he would know exactly what military radar coverage there was and what civilian radar coverage there was. And there's no doubt that Captain Zaharie Shah was experienced and well informed.
So Tracy in the UK, it's called sign Trace UK. Question for Mr. Godfrey. Put you on the spot here, Richard. What is your reason for believing MH370 will be found within 2 years as opposed to your co-host's estimate of 12 months? Just curious. Thanks so much, Tracy UK.
I guess Jeffrey thinks that I'm pessimistic, and I think Jeffrey is optimistic. So,
Yeah, that's it.
you can take the average between us. So let's
Yeah, well,
agree. Let's agree on 18 months then.
yeah, exactly. Manchain from Manchainmia 3628. Hi, watching the case on Netflix, they mentioned the possibility that a few pieces of MH370 have been found approximately less than 40, that they were planted or placed in various locations just to mislead. What do you think? Would that be possible? Best regards. Well,
Okay, let's go through this scenario. We have 43 items that were planted, as you suggest, in six different countries, up to 4,129 kilometers apart. And these items were found by 26 different people who were set up to stumble across them after they got planted. And there was one item, Roy in South Africa, that was found twice on two separate occasions. So it floated back out to sea and came back in. So that got planted twice, according to your scenario. And out of all of these items, 14 had part numbers, serial numbers, or stencil markings that conformed with MH370 Boeing manufacturing data or Malaysian airline records. And quite frankly, it's absurd to suggest that they were all planted.
in fact, we should also mention for those who haven't watched the Netflix documentary, it has been roundly criticised by everybody within the aviation industry as essentially nonsense. And
Yeah.
it was a disgrace, in fact, in my view. So, last question, Richard. Mythbuster 3808. Until MH370, I had never heard of the word flaperon. I've been an avid geek for years, but somehow never heard that term. I know what the flaps are, so is this just a new kind of flap or is it an alternative name for aileron?
Yeah, well, a flaperon has the function of a flap and the function of an aileron. As you know, a flap will increase lift, especially used for takeoff and landing, and the aileron helps to turn the aircraft. And the flaperon will can be used for both, so that's why they use the mixed name.
So, viewers, that's all we have time for. Thank you very much for viewing. We really do appreciate your support. Please subscribe to us, please like us, and please keep those comments coming. And Richard, thank you for all your fabulous work on this. And now, tomorrow, we're going to revert back to the plane guys and we're going to look at the tragic crash of Air France 447, which occurred in June of 2009. And and then the day after, we're going to go back to more questions on MH370. So we look forward to your supporting us tomorrow. Please tune in. It'll be a fascinating episode. And Richard, thanks very much for all your work.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.